Good morning, Facebook, Instagram family. Thank you for joining me this morning for another episode of Back to the World, my brother and my sister's keeper. I'm Tony. Thank you guys for coming on board. Any music that you may hear in the background, we don't own the rights to. But any comments, questions, anything that you care to share, hit me in the box down below. Like, share, comment, dislike, whatever it may be. But anyway, give me your feedback, all right? This morning, I want to talk to you about our episodes, our program about Back to the World, okay? And as I stated on our last podcast, Back to the World, it was created first before Billionaires Roundtable Conference and Sonetquity. But the purpose I built Back to the World was to facilitate and assist all of our brothers and sisters, and not just black, white, Hispanic, Asian, what have you, that are coming from prison and they're needing to make a smooth transition. Because there's truly no support system here for people that are returning back to civilization. There's no support system. Sure, you have a halfway house, you have other programs, sort of like homeless shelters and things of that nature. But your probation officer basically just want to kind of keep a hand on you. In other words, they're watching their money. And they want to make sure that, one or two things, you don't abscond and that you're going to abide and they're still going to get paid or what have you. So they're doing some modern day long distance babysitting, okay? But I wanted to talk to you about something today that is just, it's modern. It's what's happening right now, and it's futuristic. It has changed the perplexity or the complexion of the penal system, and especially the federal prison system, and that's cell phones, all right? But before I get into it, I want to let all of my viewers, those who are watching now and those who are going to watch later, I want you to know. I want to give a disclaimer, if you will, and I want to let you know that I'm not quote unquote giving up game. I'm not dry snitching. I'm not telling some things that they don't know. There's so much I can have podcasts on, man, that goes on in the prison system. But, I respect my comrades, man. You know what I'm saying? So, if I just gave you this and gave my commentary, which I want to do, and I'm still going to do it, but I want to read this article to you. Because this article is spot on. And also at the same time, it lets you know that, hey, I'm not giving up game. Game has been given up. All right? So, without any further ado, I'm just going to read it. I'm going to comment after certain paragraphs and just try to break it down, or elaborate a little bit. But it's written concisely, man, and it's written thorough. Okay? And the title of this article is called Federal Prisoners Dilemma, Cell Phone or Not. Okay? And it reads, in speaking with men and women who have gone to prison, they experience withdrawals from having a cell phone once they are inside. Something not allowed in federal prison. They feel imaginary vibrations in their pockets from a cell phone that is not there. They miss the connection with their families and friends. They are disconnected further from society. Loved ones who they used to text or call regularly have seemed to have moved on or vanished. The instantaneous access to calls, emails, and information are over. It understandably takes a while to get used to. However, access to cell phones, particularly in minimum and low security prisons, is easy. Right? So just elaborate on that. What they're basically saying is, is just like a person having an appendage, right? A person has an arm or a leg amputated or a foot. So what this article is basically saying, that people are going through different types of withdrawals of that nature, the same way they would if they had those appendages removed. So now, when that phone is removed, around a certain time of day, you're receiving calls or texts, or around a certain time of day, you're used to looking at a particular app or web page because you're looking to get the latest news, especially if you're a sports head. All the reports come out on different sports and whole bit, who's playing, who's not playing, so you can make your bets, your parlays, and what have you. So you become addicted to that, right? And you're imagining now, when you hear a sound that sounds similar, you're reaching for the phone. Then you realize, damn, I don't have it. And it's a letdown. Because, see, I haven't been home long, but I've been home long enough to have gotten addicted to the phones myself. You see? And see, when I was on the inside, I didn't have access to a phone for many, many years. Well, actually, my entire bit. I may have used the phone 2 times when another inmate had it and he let me use it. And I had it for almost an hour and I didn't know what to do with it. Because you see, in the maximum security, they were difficult to come by. All right? So, however, cell phone illegality has not stopped prisoners from using them despite the penalties. A few years ago, if a cell phone was found on a prisoner, he or she was put into special housing unit, SHU, for a period of time. They were shipped to another prison and lost up to 41 days of good conduct, thereby extending the prison sentence. In fact, the sanction is so severe that it is considered a 100-level disciplinary infraction, right up there with attacking another prisoner. So what they're saying is, back in the day, you got caught with a phone, it was equivalent to you literally stabbing another prisoner or killing another prisoner, right? Because any infraction like that, especially if it was death, it was like a 100 series shot. And that's what they're saying having a phone is. Because you can plan escapes, prison staff feel like they're at risk. Excuse me. They feel like you can give pertinent information that will help or enable or assist in an escape and what have you. Okay. When a phone is found on a prisoner, the phone was routinely sent to the FBI to identify the parties involved, to make sure that there were nothing nefarious, and to see who was being called. However, the flow of cell phones in the prisons is at such a level that the Federal Bureau of Prisons, that's the BOP, is so overwhelmed that it rarely sends someone to SHU, docks them 41 days of good conduct time, and then call it a day. They don't transfer you anymore to another prison, no SHU, and no FBI scan of the phones, which a BOP corrections officer told me accumulate in a secured area. And laughing about the extent of the problem, he told me, in the old days, we would have looked at those confiscated phones as evidence. But some corrupt corrections officers look at them as inventory to resell to inmates. So what they're basically saying is that when all of these phones are taken in, just addressing the last part, when all these phones are taken in and they're placed in the property, the whole bit, it used to be tagged as evidence. And when they were tagged as evidence, the FBI would come in, right? And they will get that phone. They will get all your information. They will get all your contacts. And they'll look at all the numbers that you call or you have listed on your telephone list. And if any of those phone calls correlate or match up or what have you, then they're going to investigate that person as well. You know, and truth be told, I don't know if it's illegal for you to get a phone call from someone with a cell phone in prison. I doubt it very seriously. I don't think they passed any laws on it. But you definitely don't want the FBI screening your calls, and especially if you got other shit going on. All right? And, you know, the prison is just overwhelmed. They're getting so many phones there. And since I've gone, it has ramped up tenfold. So you have people who are just going in the system. As soon as they get there, they'll probably buy a phone from someone because they're just leaving the streets. And they're used to cell phones. So they'll spend all of their commissary money on a phone because it keeps them in touch. And see, with the cell phones the way they are today, if you have one, it's almost as if you're outside because you can see each other, you can talk and look at each other on FaceTime, you know, on video. You can you can do a live broadcast on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok. You know, you don't necessarily want to do that if you get caught. It used to be a problem. But now all they're going to do is take the phones from you, right? So some of you ask, well, how are they getting so many phones? Here we go. You would think they sell them on commissary by it being so many. In the past, there have been dangers associated with cell phones. In 2015, 9 prisoners were indicted for using a cell phone in arranging the ambush killing of BOP officer Lieutenant Osvaldo Albarrati. Recently, Senator John Ossoff introduced legislation to crack down on cell phone use. See, you know, these people listen to things and they hear things and they think that things are a problem, so they want to jump on it, right? The problem is not the cell phones, Senator Ossoff. The problem is prison overcrowding. The problem is everybody. Pass a law on that. Don't pass a law on blocking inmates. You know what? If you hire more staff, then maybe they'll be able to keep more eyes out looking for people that's using cell phones or what have you, right? Do a better job at your job. Don't always try to raise the bar and give more punishment because it comes back around and it bites you on the ass. You know, and I'm sure Lieutenant Osvaldo Albarrati, his family doesn't agree. Not with you guys. But you've created a situation and an environment for this to be the case. Now they're getting so many phones in prison, as I said. Many individuals think that they're sold in commissary. But here it goes, right? So how does prisoners get cell phones? Drones drop them into prison yards. Visitors bring them into visitation, and corrupt prison guards sell them to prisoners at a premium. A cell phone can be purchased by a prisoner for up to $3,000, and to cover the cost, many are rented out to other prisoners for a price of $100 to $200 per hour. A price mostly determined by the number of phones in the prison. When cell phone inventory is high among the general population, prices tend to go down, just like the stock market, just like any other commodity, right? After a sweep of the compound and cell phones are confiscated, the remaining phones are priced at a premium. The person who was caught with the cell phone, thereby taking it out of the inventory on the compound, or singled out to pay for a replacement phone, a burden usually passed on to the family member who must coordinate payment and delivery of an illegal phone. It's a cycle that repeats itself in the booming cell phone economy in prison. And here's the dangers, right? See, if there's a plenty of phones, that means that many people have access. So if the more people that have access, the less it's going to be to rent the phone out. But if it's rare and it's not too many phones on the compound, the price is going to go up because because the phone's going to be in demand. And people want to communicate and talk to their people or look at them. They don't give a shit what the price are if they can afford it. And if they got hustle, they're going to put it down. So there's all sorts of things that are going on, man. I mean, you got people who've been murked behind cell phones. If they were the ones that got caught up with the phone and they couldn't pay it back, or their people refused to pay it back. So family members, you love hearing from your relatives. You love getting calls from them. You love the FaceTime. You love the party and kick it. But if your family member gets caught with this phone and you're not willing to pay, it can be, how that saying goes, it could be hell to tell the captain. Right? So, the risk of possessing and using a cell phone is something many prisoners wrestle with when they are in prison. But it is also a symptom of other problems in prison. It begs the question as to why prisoners take the extraordinary risk of having a cell phone. Federal prisoners are subject to lockdowns in prison, where they are confined to their cells and not allowed to use sanctioned methods of communication, like monitored calls and emails, core links. The prison email system tracks and reads email messages. Lockdowns occur because of staff shortages or because of disturbances in the prison. Some of these lockdowns can last days, weeks, or months. I've been on lockdowns that have lasted for years. Literally. They will let us up to stretch a little bit, just a little bit, and then we will go and take a shower. They'll let us use the microwave, right? They may they'll let you out systematically to use the phone for 15 minutes. Then they're going to lock your ass back up. And we have been, as a matter of fact, I'm going to share with you, my first year in prison, I literally missed 12 Christmases and New Year's. Because for 12 years, for 12 years, every year around Christmas time, we went on lockdown. And we were locked down sometimes, man, 7 months, 8 months. You know? So now you see, it was different. I felt the severity of it when I first got locked up. And I was a techie, man. You know, I was a gadget head. Now the rest of the world has caught up and passed me, but I was a gadget head. And I had cell phones, I had computers and everything. I had cell phones with cameras, a Sony picture screen. No one else had a picture phone. So I just got a picture phone. I'm looking at myself on the phone because I had no one that had a phone that was compatible. They were too expensive. Then when I got locked up, I lost a lot of property that I could have saved. But no, I lost the property because I could not remember my people's phone number. I couldn't remember their numbers. You know, because in cell phones, all you do is tap onto their name, then hit the phone. Well, that's the way it was back then. I had phone numbers listed from 1 through 75 or whatever the situation may be. And prior to cell phones, man, I don't care if I had 100 numbers. I'm going to remember their numbers. And every time I give this little pitch here, people say, well, that's why I write everything down. You're not going to always have it. I had it wrote down, and it was separated from me. I had it written down. I couldn't get to it. So a lot of people I lost communication with. You had people thought that I had attitude with them. I was angry at them. And a lot of people had disassociated themselves with me because they was thinking that I was angry because they weren't reaching out the whole bit. Then I had relatives and friends that were telling people that wanted to come see me that I didn't want visits, which was a lie. When you're in prison, you wouldn't give a shit if your worst enemy comes see you. I'm just being honest with you. You'll curse his ass out or her ass out. You may even slap him. But you're damn sure glad they came, man. You put your clothes on and you went out there and that's like the free world. That's what they call it. So, you get addicted to the cell phones, man. Here's the next. Attorneys often grapple with whether or not to accept a phone call from a client who is using a cell phone. On a recent listserv for the National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers, also known as NACDL, attorneys ask one another whether they should accept a call or a text from a prisoner. Now I'm going to show you where people, when they know it's wrong, sometimes the tail has to wag the dog. Because what's in front of you makes more sense than to ignore it, right? If you have a phone and you're making calls, first of all, having that phone is illegal. So therefore, any and everything that you do with it entails illegality. But you're going to get on that phone and you're going to call your attorney, right? If you have a phone, you're going to call your attorney, and here's why. The consensus was that such communication is unethical and should be prohibited. However, many attorneys pondered the necessity for communicating with a client when access to legal visits are limited and timelines of getting information for a filing is a priority. While I do understand that attorneys may state that they do not receive such calls, I know for a fact some who have. Many minimum security inmates pay the consequences for using a cell phone, but many tell me the risk is worth their sanity. I spoke to those who have left prison about the cell phone situation, and they tell me that phones are so common that people often let their guards down, thinking they are allowed. The ability to get photos and videos from family and to just get information off the internet is important to prisoners. In 2021, USP Atlanta confiscated 800 cell phones among over 1,500 inmates. So every other inmate had a cell phone. The BOP is now using scrambling equipment to block calls, something the Federal Communications Commission objected to for years. This technology is not used BOP-wide as of yet. There is more to the problem as well for the BOP, and the penalties for these cell phones add 41 days to the prisoner's sentence, meaning 41 days of cost associated with incarceration. At $120 a day, a noted average for BOP, that adds up to $4,920 of cost to the BOP for a single prisoner. There are literally thousands of violations for cell phones, which puts the cost of just additional incarceration into the millions of dollars. The BOP staff shortages have a ripple effect through the institutions. Prisoners are locked down, programming is limited, and we are a society that is addicted to the cell phone. It creates an environment in which prisoners who are already under stress of being incarcerated will take the risk of additional prison time just to have more communication with a loved one, or to check on the status of their case, or to research topics such as prisoners' rights under the First Step Act. I'll read that to you tomorrow. There is also just the despair of prison. One prisoner who told me he used the cell phone while incarcerated said, "It allowed me to speak to my young kids without them constantly hearing that the call was from prison." Then he added, "You cannot put a time limit on a call when your kids miss you." The BOP should look at the underlying causes of cell phone use as a positive first step in eliminating their use inside the prisons. By Walter Pavlo. So we're going to talk about that just a little bit. You see, we have, just a second here. We have okay. You know, when I was on the inside, it was very difficult where I was to get a phone. So I had to start my bid without a cell phone. I had to get used to not being able to communicate and talk to everyone. And when I was first incarcerated, I went to a super max. So therefore, I didn't have access to a phone or whatever anyway. They read your mail. They give you your letters and everything over a screen. So that's how it was for me upon my first couple of years in incarceration. So by that time, everyone has somewhat absconded. So I wasn't able to reach anyone anyway. And then there were certain people that I wanted to get in touch with, but I didn't know the first thing on how to do it. And then there were others that I didn't want other people to communicate with them because they would not have liked that. So after so many years of that, you get used to being without a phone, man, and then you're just doing time, man. It's like you've just been dropped in the middle of a planet and you have to fend for yourself. You have to figure things out. I had property all in Indonesia. I had property in Mexico. I had property in France. I lost all of those properties outside the United States because I did not know how to reach anyone because I couldn't remember their phone numbers. There were people that was just right up the highway, right down the road. If I could throw a rock far enough, I could have hit their homes, but I couldn't call them. You know, the crazy thing is, one day, the officers took me to the hospital in Galveston, John Seeley, and I had been thinking of this young lady that I had dated, right? And almost every time I'd go over in this area, man, the way they would take me to Galveston, I would only think of her when I got to the hospital or what have you. But the crazy thing is, one day, on my return to prison, in that prison van, I looked over in a car that was at the red light with us, and there was that young lady. It was almost like an episode of the movie Ghost, when the cat could see him, but his wife couldn't. I see this young lady that I had been thinking of, and I'm screaming in the van, trying to get her attention, but the windows were tinted, so she could not have seen me anyway. And I tell you, man, I screamed. The officers told me to shut the F up, the whole bit. And I told them, F you. You know, I'm in the back of the van. I'm shackled around my waist, my ankles, and everything. So, you know, that was a long ride back. It was very, very sad, too, because you're like a ghost, literally. You're thinking of a person, and then there they are. You see them. But you have no way of letting them know that you see them and that you're thinking of them and that you really want to communicate with them. So I know how bad it is now. Man, since I've been home, I have withdrawals from the cell phone right now myself. And I fight it. This is what's hard for me. I know better. I've experienced it. I've lost so much. And, you know, material things. I lost the relationship and friends, because some of these people I still don't know how to reach. So I've lost friends and relationships as well. But I still got through it. I got through it. This cell phone, man, this is the God and the devil. Literally. I don't know what to tell you, because the answers aren't going to be complete. But I do know, and I can tell because of the seed, and it's just like anything else. When you can't beat them, you join them. One thing about it, when the prisons get overcrowded, the whole 9 yards, man, they try to fix it. And they come up with some old slick ass way to say they're letting you out. The First Step Act. The Bad Health Act. The Good Conduct Act. They make up acts to say, you know, it's like a safety valve, like a release, like a relief valve. And that's what this shit is. So see, when things were overcrowded a while back, they gave us emails. They gave us Corelink. And people, your family members email you the whole bit. That was another step from the jail phone. And then you had problems with that phone because guys were getting killed, man. Guys were running to the phones, rushing to the phones, calling their people. You know, you feel like somebody skipped you, now you want to kill them, and the whole bit. These are the things, this is just how bad phones are. So, I truly think that with all this technology, Bill Gates, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, all of these different individuals, they should find a way. They should find a way whereas they can sell the phones. They can sell the phones via commissary. You order them. You have throwaway phones the whole bit here. Now, will you give them the pictures and everything? I mean, that would be you know, something that, you know, you'd have to make the decision of. But I know guys that get along much, much better, man. They had the cell phones, man. They were able to see their women, man, or whatever the situation may be. They can't touch them, but they damn sure could see them. And man, believe it or not, it sound perverted. But anyone that says that, they've never been locked up for long, long periods of time and have someone on the outside that they love. Now, others that are just doing it for an exercise, you know, to each his own. But to a man and a woman, let's say that woman is in prison, because we never talk about it. Let's say that woman's in prison and a man's on the outside, right? And they have their nights. They can set a date where they can get together the whole bit. You know, that would be grand. That would be beautiful. And these are things that I think that the BOP, with technology, they can do it, because you did it with the computers, right? Now, how would you go about it? I haven't given it any thought, and this is the first time that I'm broaching the subject. But I think if you can create core links for the inmates, then you can create cell phones, Boost Mobile, and what have you. To whereas, you know, you get X amount of calls, you put money on your phone the same way. Because look, here's the thing: other than the phones being monitored, guys are paying for and putting monies on their phones so they can make the calls. Somebody's doing it. Somebody's accepting it. The services aren't turned off. And it's another way to monetize. Y'all try to do everything else. I see where in some of the state prisons, they're taking away the physical visit. And then they want to charge you to be able to use the phone. Then you got to go stand up for 15, 30 minutes or whatever to use the phone and talk to your people. They can't come to visit anymore. No more live visit. Okay, well, if they got to be on the phone, find a way where they can have a cell phone. You got tablets. With the tablets, you have music. You got Google. I'm sure you got Google where you can do some research the whole bit. And you'd be surprised how many kids, man, how many young men would complete their GED. You will be thoroughly surprised. Man, there's some remarkable minds, man, inside that system. And they just need to be given a chance. Not everybody's going to do wrong with the phone. If you know, I'm sure you've seen people do some nefarious things, on Corlink. Long before you had any of that, man, they were doing it with the regular phones. If a person has the motivation to carry out a particular endeavor, I don't care how good, I don't care how sinister, you can't stop a motivation whose time has come. You can't stop it. So stop using that as an excuse, because see, the more society changes on the outside, if you don't lean a little bit towards it, then it's going to steamroll you the same way it's doing right now in the federal prison system. It's steamrolling the BOP. They can't stop it. They can't hold it down. And keep in mind, you got a prison with 1,500 inmates, and they confiscated 800 cell phones. Twice 800 is 1,600. So for the average person standing next to the other person, that other person has a phone. You know, that other person has a cell phone. So, you know, many of you who, if you're receiving calls from your relatives the whole bit, man, I'm not saying stop. Don't stop. But if you're doing wrong out there the whole bit, don't get me, the feds have not just dismissed listening to any calls. They're going to do it at random. They're going to lie and tell you that they're not doing it. But they're going to do it at random. Anyone that comes across their desk, man, or anyone that they get a bead on, they're going to investigate them. They're going to investigate all their people and everything else. So we have to be mindful of this. We got to understand. All right? So you guys go out, have a wonderful day, and thank you for joining me. And tomorrow we're going to talk about the First Step Act. And that's one of those situations, man, where they're trying to deal with prison overcrowding. They don't want to say that, so they create all different types of hoops for you to hurdle. All right? So thank you guys for signing on today. I appreciate you, man. And y'all go out and have a great one. Peace.